The morning that changed everything. Natalie Brooks pressed her thumb against the biometric scanner at the entrance of Caldwell Innovations headquarters. The glass doors slid open with a whisper, welcoming her into another Monday morning that looked exactly like the last 100. She carried her worn leather bag close to her side, her sensible flats making no sound against the polished marble floor. At 28, Natalie had perfected the art of being invisible. Her hair stayed pulled back in a simple bun. Her clothes came from discount stores, always in muted grays and browns. She wore minimal makeup, just enough to look awake during the endless meetings she attended as James Caldwell's executive assistant. The elevator chimed softly as she rode to the 42nd floor. Through the glass walls, New York City stretched out beneath her, a landscape of steel and ambition. She had once dreamed of being part of that world, not just serving it. But dreams had a way of getting complicated. "Good morning, Natalie," called Rebecca from accounting as the elevator doors opened. Natalie smiled politely. "Good morning." She walked through the executive suite, past the modern art installations that cost more than most people's yearly salaries, past the floor-to-ceiling windows that turned the office into a gallery of sky. Her desk sat outside James Caldwell's office, a position that gave her access to everything while making her practically furniture. The boss who never really looked. James Caldwell arrived at exactly 8:30, as he did every morning. Natalie had his coffee ready, his schedule printed, his morning briefing organized into neat categories. He took the coffee without looking at her, his eyes already scanning his phone. "Morning," he muttered, disappearing into his office. Natalie had stopped expecting more 3 years ago. She settled into her chair and opened her laptop, ready to manage the chaos that came with being assistant to one of the youngest billionaires in tech. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, responding to emails, coordinating meetings, solving problems before James even knew they existed. 2 hours later, his door opened abruptly. "Natalie, I need you to clear Friday evening." She looked up, surprised. James rarely asked her to adjust his personal schedule. "Of course. May I ask what for?" He leaned against the doorframe, looking distracted. "The Children's Hospital Charity Gala. My date cancelled, and I need someone to accompany me. It would be inappropriate to attend alone." Natalie's heart skipped. "You want me to attend with you?" "It's a work function," he said quickly. "I need someone who understands my schedule, who can handle the networking aspect professionally. You'll need to take notes if any important contacts are made." "Of course. Work. Always work." "I understand," she replied, her voice steady despite the flutter in her chest. James straightened, adjusting his tie. "The dress code is formal. Keep it professional and understated. Nothing too flashy. We want to maintain focus on the charity, not create distractions." The words landed like small stones. Professional. Understated. Not too flashy. Translation: don't embarrass me by trying too hard. "I'll handle it appropriately," Natalie said. He nodded and returned to his office, already forgetting the conversation. Natalie sat very still for a moment, staring at her computer screen without seeing it. Then she opened her personal email and typed a quick message to her sister. "Clara, I need your help. It's time." The Secret Life of Natalie Brooks. That evening, Natalie returned to her apartment in Brooklyn. The building looked modest from outside, but her loft told a different story. High ceilings, exposed brick, carefully curated artwork, a walk-in closet that remained mostly empty by choice. She opened the closet's back panel, revealing the section she never touched. Designer dresses in protective garment bags. Shoes that cost more than her monthly pretend rent. Jewelry inherited from her grandmother. Her phone buzzed. Clara's face filled the screen, grinning. "Finally. I thought you'd keep playing Cinderella forever." Natalie laughed, settling onto her velvet couch. "It's just for one night. I'm not revealing everything. Why not? You've been hiding for 3 years, Nat, working as an assistant when you have an MBA from Harvard. Pretending you can barely afford subway fare when Dad literally owns half of Brooklyn's real estate. Natalie sighed. You know why? I wanted to understand how business really works from the inside. I wanted to see how people treat those they consider beneath them. I wanted to earn respect through my work, not my family name. And has James Caldwell given you that respect? The question hung in the air. Natalie thought about all the times James had taken her suggestions without acknowledgement, all the late nights she had stayed to fix his mistakes, all the moments he had looked through her instead of at her. He's not cruel, Natalie said finally. He's just blind. Like most people in his position. Clara's expression softened. Well, Friday night he's going to see. Really see. Let me help you choose the perfect dress. They spent the next hour video chatting, pulling dresses from the hidden closet. Natalie tried on gown after gown, each one transforming her into someone James would never recognize. Finally, they found it. A deep emerald dress that brought out the green in her hazel eyes, elegant without being showy, sophisticated without screaming wealth. That's the one, Clara breathed. You look like yourself. Your real self. Natalie studied her reflection. Without the dowdy clothes and severe hairstyle, she looked different. Confident. Beautiful. Like the woman she had hidden away 3 years ago. The days of doubt. The rest of the week crawled by with agonizing slowness. Natalie caught herself watching James more carefully, wondering what he would think, whether anything would change. She reminded herself this was foolish. One evening would not rewrite 3 years of invisibility. On Thursday afternoon, James called her into his office. Her heart raced, wondering if he had changed his mind. About tomorrow, he began, and she braced herself. Thank you for agreeing to come. I know it's beyond your usual duties. I'll ensure you're compensated for the evening. Compensated. Like overtime. Like any other work assignment. That's not necessary, Natalie said quietly. He looked at her then, really looked, for perhaps the first time in months. You've been with me for 3 years. I don't say it enough, but your work is valuable. This company runs smoothly because of people like you. People like you. The phrase carried such casual dismissal, such unintentional cruelty. Thank you, Mr. Caldwell, she said, using his formal title deliberately. Something flickered across his face. Confusion, perhaps. But it vanished quickly. As Friday morning arrived, Natalie dressed for work as usual. Gray blouse, black slacks, sensible shoes. She pulled her hair back, applied minimal makeup, became invisible again. But inside her bag, she carried a small clutch containing lipstick, perfume, and earrings that had belonged to her grandmother. Tonight, James Caldwell would see her. Truly see her. And everything would change. She just did not know yet whether that change would break her heart or finally set it free. The morning passed in a blur of last-minute arrangements. James seemed distracted, running his hand through his dark hair repeatedly, a sign of stress she had learned to recognize. By 3 o'clock, he told her to leave early to prepare. The car will pick you up at 7, he said. Text me your address. She almost laughed. After 3 years, he did not even know where she lived. Natalie left the office, her heart pounding with anticipation and fear. In 6 hours, the carefully constructed world she had built would begin to crumble. And she had no idea what would rise from the ruins. The moment of truth, Natalie stood before her full-length mirror, barely recognizing the woman staring back. The emerald dress hugged her curves perfectly, flowing like water to the floor. Her dark hair, usually trapped in a bun, cascaded in loose waves over her shoulders. The makeup artist Clara had insisted on hiring had worked magic, enhancing her features without masking them. She looked powerful. Elegant. Real, her phone buzzed. The car had arrived. Natalie took a deep breath, slipped on her grandmother's diamond earrings, and grabbed her clutch. As she descended the stairs of her building, she saw the sleek black town car waiting. The driver stepped out, his eyes widening slightly before he professionally masked his surprise. "Miss Brooks?" "That's me," she confirmed, her voice steadier than she felt. The drive to the Plaza Hotel took 30 minutes through Friday evening traffic. Natalie watched the city lights blur past, her stomach twisting with nervousness. What was she doing? This was insane. She should have stayed invisible, stayed safe, but another voice whispered in her mind. "You deserve to be seen." The car pulled up to the red carpet entrance where photographers clustered, flashbulbs popping for various arrivals. Natalie's heart hammered. This was really happening. The driver opened her door. She stepped out, and several photographers turned, cameras clicking reflexively. She was not famous, but she looked like someone who should be. The entrance that stopped time. The plaza's ballroom glittered with 1,000 lights. Crystal chandeliers hung from ornate ceilings, casting rainbow prisms across the crowd. Men in tuxedos and women in designer gowns mingled, holding champagne flutes and trading practiced smiles. This was the world of old money and new power, and Natalie had been born into it. She checked her coat and smoothed her dress, scanning the crowd. Then she saw him. James Caldwell stood near the bar, devastatingly handsome in his custom tuxedo. He was checking his phone, probably wondering where his assistant was. Natalie's pulse quickened. This was the moment. She began walking toward him, her heels clicking against the marble floor. Several heads turned as she passed. She kept her eyes forward, focused on James. He looked up from his phone, glancing absently in her direction. Then he did a double take. His expression froze, eyes widening. The phone slipped slightly in his hand before he caught it. Natalie stopped in front of him, offering a small smile. "Good evening, Mr. Caldwell." His mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. "Natalie? Were you expecting someone else?" she asked lightly. How?" He seemed incapable of completing a sentence. His eyes traveled from her face to her dress and back again, shock written across his features. "You look completely different." "I took off my work costume," she said simply. A waiter passed with champagne. Natalie took a glass, her hand steady despite her racing heart. James continued to stare at her as if she had appeared from another dimension. "I don't understand," he finally managed. "Why do you dress so differently at work?" Natalie took a sip of champagne, considering her answer. "Because I learned early that beauty can be a liability in the workplace. People make assumptions. They dismiss you as decorative rather than functional. I wanted to be taken seriously for my work, not my appearance." James looked stunned. "That's why you always—" "Yes," she confirmed. "The bun, the shapeless clothes, the minimal makeup. All choices. I made myself invisible so my work would be visible." The evening unfolds. Before James could respond, a distinguished older gentleman approached, his silver hair impeccably styled. "James Caldwell, good to see you, my boy." "Mr. Harrison," James said, recovering his composure with visible effort. "Thank you for organizing this wonderful event." Harrison's eyes moved to Natalie with obvious appreciation. "And who is this stunning young lady?" James hesitated, and Natalie saw the war in his eyes. How did he introduce her? As his assistant? As his date? "Natalie Brooks," she said, extending her hand with practiced grace. "I work with James at Caldwell Innovations." Harrison took her hand, his grip firm. "Brooks? Are you related to Richard Brooks, by any chance?" James turned sharply to look at her. Natalie felt the secret beginning to unravel. "He's my father," she admitted. Harrison's face lit up. "Richard is an old friend." one of the finest real estate minds in New York. You must have inherited his business acumen. I try, Natalie said modestly, though her MBA and 3 years of strategic planning spoke volumes. After Harrison moved on, James pulled her aside, his expression a mixture of confusion and something that looked like betrayal. Richard Brooks is your father? The Richard Brooks who owns half of Brooklyn? Yes. Why are you working as my assistant? Why are you pretending to struggle financially? Natalie met his gaze steadily. I'm not pretending anything. I am genuinely working as your assistant. I wanted to understand business from the ground level, to see how companies really function without the privilege of my family name. I wanted to earn respect through competence, not connections. James ran his hand through his hair, a gesture she knew meant he was processing something difficult. 3 years. You've been there for 3 years, and I never knew. You never asked, she said gently. You never asked where I went to school, what my dreams were, why I was so good at strategy. You saw an assistant, and you stopped looking. The truth hung between them, uncomfortable and undeniable. Before James could respond, another voice interrupted. Natalie Brooks, as I live and breathe. Natalie turned to see Gregory Winters, one of New York's most successful venture capitalists. He kissed her cheek in greeting. Greg, it's been too long, she said warmly. Your father mentioned you were doing some kind of research project, but he wouldn't tell me where. Now I understand. Greg glanced at James with amusement. Caldwell, do you have any idea how lucky you are? This woman turned down positions at 3 Fortune 500 companies to work for you. James looked like he had been struck. She what? The revelation deepens. Throughout the evening, more pieces of Natalie's hidden life revealed themselves. She spoke fluent French with the ambassador of France. She discussed market trends with a renowned economist. She laughed and networked with the ease of someone born into this world. James watched it all with growing astonishment. Every assumption he had made about his quiet, understated assistant was crumbling. During dinner, they sat at a table with several influential business leaders. The conversation turned to expansion strategies for tech companies. Natalie listened quietly at first, then offered a thoughtful observation about emerging markets that made everyone at the table pause. One of the CEOs leaned forward. That's brilliant. Have you considered consulting? I prefer hands-on experience, Natalie replied. Consulting is theoretical. I wanted to understand the daily reality of building a company. James finally found his voice. The strategy proposal you submitted last month for the European expansion. That wasn't just assistant work, was it? Natalie met his eyes. No. It was a comprehensive business analysis based on 3 years of observing your company's operations, strengths, and weaknesses. I submitted it knowing you would probably dismiss it as overstepping. But I had to try. I didn't dismiss it, James said quietly. I presented it to the board as my own idea. They approved it. Silence fell between them. Natalie felt a flash of hurt, quickly suppressed. Of course he had taken credit. That was how the world worked. I should have known it was too good to be my thinking alone, James continued, his voice rough with something that sounded like regret. The insights were too precise, too detailed. I convinced myself I had stumbled onto something brilliant. But it was you. It's always been you. The dance. After dinner, the orchestra began playing. Couples moved onto the dance floor, swirling beneath the chandeliers. James stood and offered his hand to Natalie. May I? She hesitated, then placed her hand in his. The contact sent electricity through her arm. They had never touched beyond the occasional accidental brush of hands exchanging documents. On the dance floor, James pulled her close, one hand at her waist, the other holding hers. They moved together naturally, as if they had been dancing for years. I've been an idiot, James said quietly, his breath warm against her ear. You've been human, Natalie replied. We all see what we expect to see. No, he insisted. I've been worse than that. I've been blind and arrogant. You've been right in front of me for 3 years, brilliant and beautiful, and I treated you like office equipment. Natalie's throat tightened. Why do you think I stayed? I could have left at any time, taken a position anywhere. But I stayed because I believed in your vision. I believed in what Caldwell Innovations could become. And foolishly, I believed that eventually you might see me. James pulled back slightly to look at her face, his eyes intense. I see you now. I see you, and I'm terrified of what I've lost. You haven't lost anything, Natalie whispered. You never had it to begin with. The song ended. They stood together, neither willing to break the connection. Around them, other couples continued dancing, but Natalie and James existed in their own bubble of unspoken emotion. Finally, Natalie stepped back. I should go. This was a mistake. Don't, James said urgently, catching her hand. Please. Stay. Talk to me. Let me understand. But Natalie was already moving, weaving through the crowd toward the exit. She needed air, needed space, needed to escape before the tears threatening behind her eyes could fall. She retrieved her coat and rushed outside, gulping the cool night air. The street was quieter now, most guests already inside. Behind her, she heard rapid footsteps. Natalie, wait. She turned to find James, coatless despite the chill, his expression desperate. 3 years, he said, approaching slowly as if she might bolt. 3 years you watched me. What did you see? Natalie wrapped her coat tighter, armor against the vulnerability of the moment. I saw a brilliant man too focused on success to notice the people making it possible. I saw someone capable of greatness who had forgotten how to be humble. I saw potential. And now? What do you see now? She looked at him, really looked. His hair was mussed from running his hand through it. His eyes held genuine distress. He looked more real than she had ever seen him. I see someone beginning to wake up, she said softly. But James, one evening of revelation doesn't change 3 years of invisibility. You took credit for my work. You paid me a fraction of what I'm worth. You made me feel small every time you called me professional and understated, as if asking me not to outshine you. James flinched as if struck. You're right. You're absolutely right. And I don't know how to fix it. Maybe you can't, Natalie said, her voice breaking slightly. Maybe some things, once broken, stay broken. She turned and walked toward the street, raising her hand for a taxi. One pulled up immediately. As she reached for the door, James called out. I'm in love with you. Natalie froze, her hand on the taxi door. Slowly, she turned back. James stood on the sidewalk, vulnerable and exposed. I don't know when it happened. Maybe tonight, seeing you like this. Maybe 3 years ago when you first walked into my office. Maybe every day in between. But I'm in love with you, and I've been too blind to recognize it. Tears finally spilled down Natalie's cheeks. You're in love with a fantasy. You're in love with the woman in the emerald dress who impressed your colleagues. But that's not all of who I am. I'm also the woman in the gray blouse who fixed your mistakes and covered your oversights. I'm both, and you only want one. Then show me both, James pleaded, moving closer. Show me every version of you. Let me learn who you really are. Give me a chance to see all of you. Natalie's heart warred with her head. She wanted to believe him, wanted to fall into his arms and let the fairy tale ending write itself. But she had learned that real life was more complicated than romance novels. Monday morning, she said finally. When I walk into that office in my gray blouse and sensible shoes, if you still see me the way you're seeing me now, then maybe we can talk. But I won't be your after-hours fantasy and your invisible assistant during business hours. It's all of me or none of me. James nodded slowly. Monday morning. I promise. Natalie climbed into the taxi and gave her address. As the car pulled away, she looked back to see James standing alone on the sidewalk, watching her disappear into the night. She had revealed her truth. Now he had to reveal his, the weekend of reflection. Saturday morning arrived with pale sunlight filtering through Natalie's windows. She lay in bed longer than usual, staring at the ceiling and replaying every moment of the gala. James's expression when he first saw her. His growing realization throughout the evening. His declaration of love on the sidewalk. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages. Clara demanding details. Her father asking how the evening went. Several colleagues from the gala requesting her contact information for business discussions. And 17 messages from James. She read them in order, watching his thoughts evolve from confusion to clarity. The last one, sent at 3 in the morning, simply said, "I spent 3 hours researching you tonight. Harvard MBA, summa cum laude. Published thesis on corporate culture and employee satisfaction. You could have run any company in New York. Why mine?" Natalie typed slowly, "Because yours had the most room for improvement." His response came immediately, despite the early hour, "Can I see you today?" She hesitated, then replied, "Monday." We agreed. "I don't want to wait." "Waiting builds character," she typed back. "You'll survive." But as Saturday stretched into Sunday, Natalie found herself equally impatient. She tried to focus on reading, on catching up with friends, on anything except thinking about James Caldwell. Nothing worked. Sunday evening, her father called. "So," Richard Brooks said without preamble. "Greg Winters tells me you've been hiding in plain sight at Caldwell Innovations. When were you planning to tell your old man?" Natalie smiled despite herself. "When the experiment was complete." "And is it complete?" She thought about James standing in the cold, vulnerable and honest. "I think it might be entering a new phase." Her father chuckled. "I've known James Caldwell since he was 23, fresh out of Stanford with more ambition than sense. He's brilliant, but he's been coasting on that brilliance, assuming it's enough." "Sounds like you shook him up properly." "Maybe too much," Natalie admitted. "Nonsense. Men like James need shaking. They get comfortable in their genius and forget that other people have value too. You did him a favor." Her father paused. "The question is, what happens now?" "I don't know, Dad. I really don't." "Well," Richard said warmly, "whatever you decide, I'm proud of you. 3 years of research, building a genuine understanding of corporate culture from the inside. That takes dedication. And courage." After hanging up, Natalie felt marginally better. But as Monday morning approached, her nervousness returned. Would James truly see her? Or would Friday night fade into just another weekend memory? Monday morning, the test. Natalie dressed carefully Monday morning, choosing her usual gray blouse and black slacks. She pulled her hair into the familiar bun, applied minimal makeup. She looked at herself in the mirror and saw her work self staring back, understated and professional. This was the real test. Anyone could be charmed by a beautiful woman in an evening gown. But could James Caldwell see past the packaging to the person beneath? She arrived at the office at her usual time. The marble lobby felt different somehow, charged with potential. She rode the elevator to the 42nd floor, her heart beating faster than normal. The executive suite was quiet when she arrived. Too quiet. Usually, she beat James to the office by at least 30 minutes. Today, his office door stood open, lights already on. Natalie set down her bag and moved to his doorway. James sat at his desk, but it looked completely different. Files were reorganized. His computer monitor showed a spreadsheet she recognized as her European expansion strategy. And on his desk, prominently displayed, was a plaque that read, Strategy Consultant, Natalie Brooks. He looked up, and the expression on his face took her breath away. Not surprise. Not disappointment. Recognition. Pure, genuine recognition. "Good morning, Natalie," he said, standing. "I've been waiting for you." She stepped into the office slowly. "What is all this?" "This," James gestured around, "is me keeping my promise. I spent the entire weekend reviewing every file, every memo, every suggestion you've made over the past 3 years. Do you know what I discovered?" Natalie shook her head, unable to speak. "That approximately 60% of my successful strategies originated with you. That the company's efficiency increased by 40% after you implemented new organizational systems. That employee satisfaction improved dramatically after you quietly suggested policy changes. You've been running half this company from an assistant's desk, and I was too self-absorbed to notice." He moved around the desk, stopping a few feet from her. "So I'm making changes. Effective immediately, you're promoted to Chief Strategy Officer. You'll have your own team, your own budget, and full authority to implement your vision. Your salary will reflect your actual value, not my previous blindness." Natalie felt tears threatening. "James, you don't have to." "Yes, I do," he interrupted gently. "I have to because it's right. I have to because you've earned it 1,000 times over. And I have to because I love you, and love means seeing someone fully, not just the parts that are convenient." "You said you loved the woman at the gala," Natalie whispered. "I was wrong." James took a step closer. "I love the woman who spent 3 years working twice as hard for half the recognition she deserved. I love the woman who fixed my mistakes without demanding credit. I love the woman who believed in my company's potential enough to sacrifice her own advancement. I love the woman standing in front of me right now in a gray blouse and sensible shoes because that woman is real, brilliant, and far too good for someone who took so long to appreciate her." A tear escaped down Natalie's cheek. "I was so angry at you. You had every right to be. You still do." James reached up slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he gently wiped the tear with his thumb. "But I'm hoping you might give me a chance to do better. To be better. To build something real with you, both professionally and personally. The new beginning." Natalie looked into his eyes, searching for any hint of insincerity. She found none. This was not the charming billionaire who had taken her for granted. This was a man humbled by his own failures, genuine in his desire to change. "I have conditions," she said finally. "Name them." "First, I want everything in writing. The promotion, the salary, the authority. I won't be undermined or have my contributions dismissed again." "Done. HR has the paperwork ready for your signature." "Second, if we're going to explore something personal, it stays separate from work. In the office, we're colleagues. Equal colleagues. No special treatment, no favoritism." James nodded. "Agreed. Though I should warn you, keeping my feelings professional around you is going to be the hardest challenge I've ever faced." Despite herself, Natalie smiled. "And third, you take my entire strategy team to lunch once a month. You learn their names, their goals, their ideas. You see them the way you failed to see me." "I can do that," James said softly. "I will do that." "Anything else?" Natalie pretended to think. "You could start by asking me to dinner. A real dinner, not a work function. Where we talk about things that matter." James's face lit up with the first genuine smile she had seen in 3 years. "Natalie Brooks, would you have dinner with me tonight? Somewhere quiet where I can spend several hours learning everything I should have asked about 3 years ago?" "That sounds perfect," she whispered. He reached for her hand, and she let him take it. The touch felt different now, weighted with honesty and possibility. "I'm sorry," James said quietly. "For every time I overlooked you, dismissed you, or made you feel invisible. You deserved so much better." "Yes, I did," Natalie agreed. "But you're trying now. That matters." A knock at the door interrupted them. Rebecca from accounting stood in the doorway, her eyes widening as she took in their clasped hands. "Sorry to interrupt. The morning meeting starts in 10 minutes. "Thank you, Rebecca," James said warmly. "How is your daughter? She was starting college this fall, right?" Rebecca looked shocked that he remembered. "She's doing wonderful, thank you for asking." After she left, Natalie raised an eyebrow at James. "You remembered? I asked HR for files on everyone in the company. Names, families, achievements. I have a lot of learning to do." He squeezed her hand gently. "But I'm ready to start." The meeting that changed everything. The morning meeting was different from any Natalie had attended before. Instead of sitting outside taking notes, she entered the conference room as James's equal. He introduced her as the new Chief Strategy Officer, and if anyone was surprised, they hid it well. What they could not hide was their reaction when Natalie began speaking. She presented a comprehensive vision for the company's next 5 years, complete with market analysis, risk assessment, and projected growth. Every executive in the room leaned forward, listening intently. When she finished, the room erupted in questions and enthusiasm. James watched from his seat, his expression proud and amazed. After the meeting, Douglas Chen, the CFO, pulled Natalie aside. "That was extraordinary. How long have you been developing that strategy?" "About 3 years, Natalie said with a small smile. 3 years. Douglas shook his head in wonder. "All while working as an assistant. You're exactly what this company needs." Throughout the day, Natalie felt the shift in how people treated her. Not because her appearance had changed, she still wore her simple work clothes, but because her value was finally acknowledged. Colleagues sought her opinion. Department heads requested meetings. The company was seeing her, truly seeing her, for the first time. The dinner. That evening, James took Natalie to a small Italian restaurant in Brooklyn, far from the glamorous venues of the charity gala. They sat at a corner table, candles flickering between them, and talked for hours. James asked about her childhood, her education, her dreams. He listened to her stories about growing up in a wealthy family but wanting to forge her own path. He heard about her frustration with being judged for her appearance instead of her mind. He learned about her mother's illness when Natalie was young and how it had shaped her understanding of what truly mattered. In turn, Natalie learned about James's own struggles. His brilliant but emotionally distant father. His drive to prove himself. His fear that success was all he had to offer. His loneliness despite being surrounded by people. "I built a company," James said quietly, "but I forgot to build a life. I forgot that business is about people, not just profits." "You reminded me of that." "You're not broken, James," Natalie said gently. "You just lost your way. We all do sometimes." He reached across the table, taking her hand. "Will you help me find it again?" She smiled, squeezing his fingers. "I think we can help each other." As they left the restaurant, walking together through the Brooklyn streets, James stopped suddenly. "What is it?" Natalie asked. "I just realized something. For 3 years, I walked past you every morning without really seeing you. I took your brilliance for granted. I reduced you to a function instead of recognizing you as a person. And yet you stayed. Why?" Natalie looked up at the stars barely visible through the city's light pollution. "Because I believed in second chances. Because I believed people could grow. And because somewhere deep down, I believed that if you ever truly saw me, it would be worth the wait." "Was it?" James asked softly. Worth the wait? She turned to face him, her eyes reflecting the streetlights. Ask me again in a year. After you've proven that Friday night wasn't just a moment of clarity but the beginning of lasting change. After you've shown me that you can see everyone around you, not just me. After you've built a company culture based on respect and recognition, not hierarchy and assumption. That's a tall order, James said, but he was smiling. You're a billionaire tech genius, Natalie replied. I think you can handle it. He pulled her close, and she let herself lean into his embrace. For the first time in 3 years, she felt truly seen. Not as an assistant, not as a beautiful woman in an evening gown, but as herself, completely and wholly. I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving I can see you, James whispered against her hair. Good, Natalie murmured. Because I'm going to spend the rest of mine making sure you never stop looking. 6 months later. The office of Caldwell Innovations hummed with different energy now. James had implemented weekly meetings where every employee, regardless of position, could present ideas. The company had launched a mentorship program pairing executives with junior staff. Employee satisfaction scores had reached all-time highs. And in a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows, Natalie Brooks led her strategy team through their latest project. She wore what she wanted now, sometimes elegant, sometimes casual, always professional. She had stopped hiding. James appeared in her doorway, waiting respectfully until her meeting concluded. When her team filed out, he entered, closing the door behind him. How was your day, Chief Strategy Officer? Productive, Natalie smiled. We just finalized the Asian market expansion. It's going to be brilliant. I never doubted it. James moved closer, his expression turning serious. I have something for you. He pulled a small box from his pocket. Natalie's breath caught. Before you panic, James said quickly, this isn't what you think. Well, it is eventually, but not yet. You said to ask you again in a year. It's only been 6 months. But I wanted you to know I'm serious about this. About us. He opened the box to reveal not a ring, but a key. This is the key to my apartment. I want you to have it. Not because I'm asking you to move in, but because I want you to know you're always welcome in my life. My real life, not the polished version I show the world. The messy, imperfect, still learning version. Natalie took the key, her eyes shining. You're really doing it. You're really changing. We're really changing, James corrected. You showed me how. You showed me that people matter more than profits, that listening matters more than talking, that seeing someone fully is the greatest gift you can give. She stood, moving into his arms. In 6 more months, when that year is up, ask me again. Ask you what? James murmured against her hair, though he knew. Everything, Natalie whispered. Ask me everything. And in that moment, surrounded by the company they were building together, the future stretched before them bright with possibility. The invisible woman had become visible. The blind man had learned to see. And together, they were creating something far more valuable than any business success. They were creating something real.